Corn snakes are an animal that we talked about quite a bit in the past, but I haven't done as many videos on them recently. So I want to update basically all the corn snake videos, and I'm redoing the entire care guide on the site. Depending on when you're watching this, it might not be updated just yet, but I thought it'll be coming soon. But to get started, today I wanted to give you some pros and cons on keeping corn snakes. This video is sponsored by Amino, an app made up of communities for pretty much any interest you can possibly think of. Of course, I'm in the Reptiles Amino, but I also hang out in Stardew Valley, Overwatch, Adventure Time, and when you join different Aminos, you can make posts and directly chat with people using text, voice, video, and the avatar chat. My favorite of these features are the group chats, each with its own topic. It's a great way to just jump into a conversation and get involved with others who share your common interest. Basically, it's an app that helps you meet new people, but it breaks the ice for you. So if you want to start a conversation with someone in a Reptile Amino, just start talking about your reptiles, because there's not going to be any like weird small talk trying to figure out what you have in common, because chances are they're gonna like reptiles too if they're in the Reptile Amino. But all the download links are in the description and pinned comment of this video if you're interested in checking it out. So they're simple, they're easy to care for, they're small, their enclosures aren't too big. These are kind of all the reasons that you hear everywhere. There's lots of videos on it. Nothing very new. So in this, I'll try and dig a bit deeper and explain some of the reasons as to why I think you may or may not want to get a corn snake. So the very first pro is that they're great for beginners, but I don't think this is the case because they just have easy requirements. I think it's more so because they're such hardy animals and they can really survive in the improper setup for much longer than other animals. Obviously, you do not want to purposefully give them something incorrect, and if you see that you're making an error, you want to fix it as quickly as possible, but you have kind of more time to do so. For example, there might be some species of snakes or other reptiles or just animals where if they're in the wrong setup or wrong conditions or wrong temperature or something for just a little too long, maybe it's a few hours to a few days, then that doesn't give you very much time, and that could actually end up killing them. Meanwhile, with corn snakes, if it's a few hours, few days, even a few weeks, months, or maybe even a couple years of the wrong setup, most of the time, there's going to be a much higher chance that a corn snake will recover easily and maybe not even be affected. Now, years is pushing it, so. However, Gobi actually was in like terrible conditions for quite a while. You can see the very first video I did with him when I got him a few years ago, and he managed to survive those awful conditions for quite a while, and now he's a pretty healthy snake. So, you don't want to make errors, but you have more time to make mistakes, which is why it might be good for a beginner. Even if the corn snake isn't the happiest in the wrong conditions, at least it will survive and give you that time to really learn with it. Basically, do your best to set it up properly, but if you notice that you made a mistake, there's a higher chance that they'll be perfectly fine compared to a lot of other species. Next up, we can go to a con. That being that they're just not unique. At this point, they are everywhere. I mean, there are like certain morphs. You don't see this morph every day, but if someone owns a snake, there's a very high chance it's going to be a corn snake or a ball python, of course. But it's like if you're talking to other reptile keepers and you're like, oh, I own a corn snake, it's not some amazing species that they've never heard of. I'm sure they've known about them. They probably even cared for them. Kind of like in the lizard world, everyone owns a bearded dragon, except for me. In the snake world, everyone owns a corn snake. Now, you don't have to treat this as a con. This could be a perfectly okay thing with you, and you shouldn't base what you want just because a lot of other people have it. But it's like, they're everywhere. I'm not bored of them, but I'm so used to seeing them that it's not some super amazing special thing when I see a picture of a corn snake. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. Now, the next pro actually comes off of the con that I just mentioned. That being that because they're kept so much, people have just perfected their husbandry. Like, if you have a question, you're gonna have no difficulty finding someone to teach you how to properly care for it. If you have an issue, chances are plenty of other people have had that same issue. Now, if you're keeping a species that's really not kept often, or there's a lot of controversy around how it's kept, which that's with every reptile, but basically, there's no lack of information. You can always find someone to turn to and answer your question. You can always find a care guide to teach you how to do something, and you'll pretty much always relate to some other keeper because they are just, everyone has so much experience with them as a whole that you don't have to freak out about some weird unknown thing going on with your snake. Next up is a con. This is the most annoying con for me. That being, I personally think they are really not good for handling. Obviously, I'm working with it here, but as babies especially, they can be very fast, a bit slippery, and just ready to scoot away from you. Now, pythons and boas tend to be much slower, much more chill. They don't freak out, they're not all slinky. But meanwhile, colubrids, specifically corn snakes, it seems like a lot more often, they just get so active, they move around so much that it gets a little bit annoying. Now, this isn't a reason to not get a corn snake, and if you do want an animal to handle, it's definitely something you'll get used to. But goby is probably the most difficult animal to not only hold, but also to shoot and make videos with, because he's just everywhere, like constantly. This is the first time he stopped moving. He gets all over the mic, all over, he wraps on to everything. And they spend lots of times in trees. I don't know if they're semi-arboreal. Are they semi-arboreal? They like to chill in trees a lot. So with that, they are just really good at holding onto something, and they feel uncomfortable when they don't have something to latch onto. His tail pretty much always loops around whatever's there, so that's that last little bit of support. If you just put him in the middle of the room, they might panic a little bit because they have nothing to be secured onto. The worst thing is when he gets into the shelving, it takes forever to get him out of it because he wraps up around these things all over it, and he just keeps looping through, and he's really fast. Not the easiest snake on earth to handle, but it's definitely manageable. It's not too hard. A really simple way to, figure this out to see if it's a good snake for you to handle is you can just try and find a local one that you can just go chill out with at a pet store or an expo or something. So we kind of went over all the main ones. There's one extra little pro that I have, which I might have mentioned it in the past, I'm not entirely sure, but that being that they pretty much always stick to mice their entire life while eating. So lots of animals, if basically any animal that gets larger than a corn snake, or any snake that gets larger than a corn snake, is going to have to move on to rats at some point in its life. Rats tend to be more expensive, sometimes more difficult to find, as some of you have said, and switching them over to rats can be a bit of a difficulty. So a ball python, for example, I'm pretty sure they're always going to have to move up to rats because mice just simply end up too small for them. Sometimes it's a super smooth transition with ball pythons, like they go from mice to rats without an issue. Other times it's really difficult and people wish that they started them on rats very early on so that they didn't have to deal with it later. Corn snakes, however, goby here is pretty much full size. He just shed, so he's still very slowly growing. However, he can just go on adult or jumbo mice. I had him on jumbo, but I moved him to adult because jumbos are just starting to make him a little bit fat soon, probably, if I keep feeding them to him. But rats are really something you never have to think about as a corn snake owner, so that can be pretty convenient. So there we go. I'm sure I've missed a lot, and obviously there's lots of others that are just repeated everywhere, but hopefully these are a bit more unique and maybe something new that you had not heard before. Let me know any other reasons that you can think of in the comments of this video, and whether you're considering corn snakes, whether you already have one. You might already have one since they are just so popular. But that can be a nice thing. Again, you can check out Amino in the description, and you can follow me if you want. You can join the Reptiles community or any other community if you want, but the Reptiles one is pretty cool and relevant to our community here. So maybe I'll see you over on Amino, but that'll be it for this video. Keep a lookout for the corn snake care guide, which will hopefully be up soon, along with lots of other corn snake content. That's it for this video. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.